For a century, the world saw Africa as a quarry, a continent-sized source of minerals and resources, its wealth dug up and shipped out to fuel factories oceans away. It was a simple, extractive narrative, but that story is old. It's tired, and a quiet, powerful revolution is underway, one that is poised to reshape the entire global economy. This isn't about what's being pulled from under the ground anymore, but what's being built on top of it. The roar you hear in the distance is not the sound of mining equipment. It's the sound of factories coming to life. Imagine a world where this one-sided narrative is completely flipped, where the flow of finished goods reverses and the continent known for its raw materials becomes known for its advanced manufacturing. This is no longer a story about distant potential or hopeful forecasts. It is the story of a trillion-dollar shift in economic power, a seismic change that is happening right now. It's a deliberate and accelerating shift from extraction to creation, from dependency to industrial might. The world's next great manufacturing hub isn't where you think, it's in Africa. The old story, the problem. To understand the breathtaking scale of this new vision, we must first look back at the entrenched system it's replacing. For generations, the global economic model cast Africa in a single restrictive role, the supplier of raw materials. It's an invisible thread connecting the phone in your pocket, the battery in your electric car, and the chocolate you eat directly to the soil of the African continent. This system was designed to be efficient, but its efficiency was one-directional, channeling wealth outwards. Take cobalt, an irreplaceable mineral in the lithium-ion batteries that power our digital lives. Roughly 80% of the world's supply comes from just one country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. By this measure, the DRC is the undisputed king of cobalt, a veritable superpower of a critical resource. Yet for decades, this incredible geological wealth has not translated into widespread national prosperity. The story has been one of raw, brute force extraction. Unprocessed ore is dug from the ground, often under perilous conditions, and loaded onto ships bound for complex refineries in Asia and Europe. The real value, the intricate high-tech process of refining that ore into battery-grade material worth tens of thousands of dollars per ton, happens thousands of miles away. Africa has been supplying the essential ingredients, but others have been baking the cake and selling it for a massive profit, leaving behind mere crumbs. This model, repeated across the continent with resources like gold, diamonds, cocoa, and oil, created a dangerous and volatile dependency on global commodity prices. When prices are high, economies boom, and governments have cash to spend. But when they inevitably crash, as they always do, entire nations are plunged into crisis, facing budget shortfalls and economic stagnation. This boom and bust cycle made long-term planning almost impossible. Furthermore, this structure severely limited the creation of high-skilled, high-wage jobs and locked the continent into the lowest value rung of the global supply chain. It was a system that systematically siphoned wealth, opportunity, and potential outwards. But that story is finally and definitively coming to an end. The rules of the game are being rewritten, not by outside powers, but by Africans themselves. The turning point, the catalysts for change. A global paradigm shift of this magnitude doesn't happen by accident or overnight. It's the result of powerful new forces converging at the perfect moment, creating an unprecedented window of opportunity. Three forces in particular are setting the stage for Africa's industrial awakening. First is the technology leapfrog. Historically, industrialization was a brutal, capital-intensive, and polluting process that took generations. Today, the rules are fundamentally different. The cost of advanced technology, from robotics and automation to AI-driven quality control and 3D printing, has plummeted. This allows African entrepreneurs and nations to bypass the old, heavy industrial model and leap directly to smarter, more agile, and cleaner forms of manufacturing. Critically, this technological leap extends to energy. The rise of affordable, decentralized renewable energy, particularly solar, is a game changer. It means a factory no longer needs to be tethered to a historically unreliable or non-existent national grid. It can generate its own stable, low-cost power, unlocking industrial potential in areas previously considered too remote or too costly to develop. The second force is the supply chain revolution. The global pandemic and rising geopolitical tensions were a brutal, system-wide wake-up call. The long, hyper-efficient, just-in-time supply chains that snaked back to a handful of manufacturing hubs were suddenly revealed to be incredibly fragile. A single crisis in one part of the world could lead to empty shelves, halted production lines, and economic chaos across the globe. This has triggered a strategic rethink in boardrooms everywhere, with companies now desperately seeking to regionalize their supply chains to build resilience. For European and Middle Eastern companies looking to diversify away from Asia, Africa is the logical, proximate, and increasingly capable partner. The continent's strategic location, with its access to the Atlantic, Indian, and Mediterranean seas, is no longer a liability of distance, but a massive asset in a new world that values regional proximity and security over maximum efficiency. The third, and perhaps most powerful force, is the rise of the African consumer, a market now being supercharged by the African Continental Free Trade Area. Africa is the world's youngest and fastest-growing continent, with a median age of just 19 years. This isn't just a workforce, it's the next great global consumer market, hungry for goods and services. For decades, African factories, where they existed, looked overseas for customers. Now the biggest and most exciting opportunity is right at home. This massive internal market is being unified by the AfCFTA, arguably the most ambitious free trade project in modern history. When fully implemented, it will create a single market of over 1.4 billion people, with a combined GDP of over $3 trillion. Think of it like the creation of the European Union, but on a continental scale, erasing tariffs and harmonizing regulations. The World Bank projects that a fully implemented AfCFTA could lift 50 million people out of extreme poverty and raise incomes by 9% by 2035. This isn't just about making trade easier, it's about creating an integrated economic bloc with the scale, power, and influence to compete with anyone on the global stage. The evidence, stories from the revolution. This industrial revolution isn't theoretical, it's being built brick by brick and factory by factory across the continent. These are not isolated success stories, they are data points in a much larger continent-wide trend. Let's start with automotives. For years, South Africa has been the continent's undisputed automotive powerhouse. But the industry has faced serious headwinds, including a manufacturing sector that contracted in the first quarter of 2025, and a national logistics crisis crippling its ports and railways. Yet even with these profound challenges, the country's ambition under its National Automotive Master Plan is to push production toward an incredible 1.4 million units by 2035. But the story is no longer just about South Africa. In West Africa, Ghana is rapidly emerging as a new automotive hub, attracting investment from global giants like Volkswagen, Nissan, and Toyota to assemble vehicles for not only Ghana's 33 million people, but for the growing regional market of over 400 million in West Africa. This is the AfCFTA in action, with countries strategically building capacity to serve a vast continental consumer base. Now consider the frontier of modern medicine, pharmaceuticals. For too long, Africa has almost entirely been dependent on imported vaccines and medicines, a vulnerability the pandemic laid bare with catastrophic consequences. In response, a powerful movement towards health sovereignty is taking hold. In Kigali, Rwanda, German biotech giant BioNTech has established its first African manufacturing site. housed in modular, high-tech biocontainers, themselves an example of leapfrog technology. The $150 million facility is on track to begin producing batches of advanced mRNA-based vaccines for process validation in 2025. It's part of a wider network with facilities planned in Senegal and South Africa, a clear and decisive signal that the continent is building its own capacity to fight future health crises on its own terms. Perhaps the most profound shift of all is in how Africa handles its own natural resources. This is the new resource story. Nations are rewriting the rules to capture more value from their own wealth. Take Zimbabwe, which holds Africa's largest lithium reserves. Following a 2022 ban on the export of unprocessed raw lithium ore, the government announced in June 2025 a firm ban on the export of unprocessed raw lithium ore. The government announced in June 2025 a firm ban on the export of semi-processed lithium concentrates starting from 2027. The message to the world is clear and unambiguous. If you want Zimbabwe's lithium, you will have to build the refineries and process it in Zimbabwe, moving up the value chain to produce lithium sulfate, a key input for batteries. Chinese-backed companies are already pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into building the necessary processing plants to meet this deadline. This single policy could radically alter the economics of the global battery supply chain. This trend extends across a multitude of industries. In the textile and apparel sector, Kenya's Made in Kenya initiative is gaining significant momentum, with a thriving apparel sector manufacturing for major international brands like H&M and Zara. And in tech and electronics, local companies in Nigeria and Egypt are assembling smartphones, laptops, and other devices, serving not only their large domestic markets but also exporting across the region. From cars to vaccines, from batteries to blue jeans, the evidence is clear. The factories are being built, the workers are being trained, and the goods are rolling off the production lines. The trillion-dollar impact. The so what? So what does all of this mean? What is the global significance of this tectonic shift? This is where we see a fundamental rebalancing of the global economy. The trillion-dollar shift represents the combined economic force of this industrial awakening. First, consider the sheer economic value being unlocked and brought onshore. It's the value of manufacturing output that will no longer be booked in Asia or Europe, but in Africa. It's the value of millions of new, stable, higher-skilled jobs, creating a virtuous cycle of growth. More jobs lead to more disposable income, which fuels more consumer spending, which in turn drives more demand for locally manufactured goods. It's also the value of the new infrastructure, the modern ports, high-speed railways, and continent-spanning power grids required to support this industrial ecosystem. Mega projects like the Dangote refinery in Nigeria, a colossal $20 billion investment, are already transforming economies. It's turning the nation from a long-time importer to a net exporter of refined petroleum products, saving the country over 10 billion naira in foreign exchange annually and creating a foundation for a new downstream petrochemical industry. Forecasts that Africa's combined GDP could grow significantly by 2050, once seen as distant dreams, now appear more like a credible data-driven trajectory. This shift has equally profound geopolitical consequences. For decades, global economic power has been concentrated in the hands of the nations that owned the factories. Africa's rise as a manufacturing hub directly challenges this established world order. The continent is moving from a passive role in the geopolitical games between the West and China to becoming a powerful player in its own right, capable of setting its own agenda. The narrative is no longer about what others can do for Africa, but what they must do to partner with Africa. As the continent builds its industrial base, it will become less reliant on finished goods from abroad, altering trade flows that have been in place for centuries. A world where made in Ethiopia or assembled in Rwanda is as common as made in China is a very different world. It means new centers of innovation, new corporate giants, and a new, more balanced, multipolar distribution of economic power. Conclusion: the New World. For generations, the global economic map has been drawn with clear, unmoving lines. The factories were here, the resources were there. The centers of capital and innovation were firmly in the global north. Africa was a continent defined by what it gave away. That map is now being redrawn. This is not a story of blind optimism. The challenges remain immense. Infrastructure gaps are still massive, political instability in certain regions is a real risk, and a lack of access to capital remains a significant hurdle for many entrepreneurs. But the momentum is undeniable and accelerating. This is a continent seizing control of its own destiny, driven by the unstoppable energy of its youthful population, groundbreaking technology, and a shared political vision for an integrated economic future. This isn't just about Africa's rise. It's about the fundamental rebalancing of the global economy and the dawn of a new, more resilient and more distributed economic era. The next generation of global manufacturing giants may not come from the places we have grown to expect. They are being built today, right now in the burgeoning factories of Africa. The trillion-dollar shift has begun, and it is setting the stage for a truly transformative economic era. If you want to follow the real story of the global economy, the one that isn't making the headlines yet, subscribe to this channel and join the conversation below. What part of this transformation excites you the most?